You're listening to 88.5, the voice of Shelby County Schools. I'm Kathy Hart, your musical masseuse, and you know I get so excited when I have guests now in the virtual studio, and it's Black History Month, and we are learning and growing and just fortifying our knowledge of Black history. And Shelby County Schools has been having programs all month long. And today we're going to talk about their Family Literacy Night. We have Dr. Erin Luster in the virtual studio with us and
Hello, everybody.
the author, Ms. Natasha Tarpley in the studio with us. And we're going to talk about some excellent reads. How you guys doing?
Doing well. We've got a lot of snow here in Chicago, which is where I'm located. And I hear you guys are having some weather in Memphis too. So I guess we're all in the same boat.
Yes, we are snowy in Memphis, but this is atypical for us. So our
Wow.
kids are enjoying it. We've been seeing the pictures online. They've been having a great time. They were out of school yesterday for President's Day, and we received a lot of pictures from families, and that was really exciting.
Oh, nice. Very
Yeah,
nice.
so they are loving it. And they can't stay out. They can't stay out too long because, the temperature is so low they don't realize sometimes you get cold. So, and in Chicago, being from Wisconsin, it gets cold all the time, but then there's so much like this snow that you guys just got. It's just a whole
Oh,
lot. It's a whole lot to deal with.
yeah.
So when we talk about literacy night, and literacy is so important to our families at Shelby County Schools, so important for our third graders, for all of our students. So Dr. Luster, what made you guys think about having a family literacy night?
So, our FACE department has been doing family literacy nights for a couple years now, following our district's commitment to our third grade commitment, which ensures that all of our students will be reading at or above grade level by third grade. And that's something that we're really proud of, the work towards that initiative. And so, one of our tenets, or one of the things that we're involved in, is increasing students' home libraries with high interest, high quality texts. And so we're always looking for authors and seeing great things that they're doing. We recently came across I Love My Hair by Miss Natasha Tarpley, and we were so impressed with the text and just the spirit around the text. And we thought it would be appropriate for Black History Month. This year's focus nationally for Black History Month is around the Black family. And then so many people of color, so many Black people have stories around their hair in their childhood, spending time with their parents, getting their hair done, just so many, just kind of different and fun stories. And then there's also just a lot of question around hair in our community today, whether it's conversation about the Crown Act or how someone is wearing their hair. It's become so much a part of our culture that we really wanted to capture that this month in Black History Month in celebrating for our students. Ms. Tarpley has an excellent text that really brings that spirit, particularly for girls. But we also are working towards some things for boys too. So we were just really excited that she welcomed the invitation to be involved with our students and our families here in Shelby County.
Wow. Well, thank you. Thank you so much, Ms. Natasha. So let's talk about your book, you and your book, I Love My Hair. So, how did that come about?
A lot of the things that Dr. Lester just said, that whole idea of, or that experience of sitting with my mom and having my hair combed, that was a very special time for me in my childhood. So there are four kids in my family. I'm the oldest, and I have three younger siblings. And I always had to share everything with them. And so getting my hair combed was the one time that I had my mom all to myself. And my mom has always been my champion in terms of promoting my writing and just encouraging me to write. She was one of the first people who I actually saw writing. So she inspired me in that way. And then when we were combing my hair, we would play this game where we would pretend that there were people who were living in my hair just to distract me from the tangles. And we would go around and make up stories and talk about these characters who lived in my hair. So it made it a really fun, creative, and imaginative experience, which the people who live in my hair didn't exactly make it into the book I Love My Hair, but that whole idea of the little girl, Kiana, who imagines all the wonderful things and talks about all the wonderful ways that she can wear her hair, that spirit of creativity and joy is really what I wanted to transmit in this story.
Oh, wow, that's awesome. And it's so important, especially nowadays, for our children to embrace the spirit of creativity and that freedom of
Yes,
being
absolutely.
themselves and being themselves out loud, you know, and part of themselves, you're right, is your hair, you know, and especially for little girls. I remember, you know, getting my hair done as a little girl, you know, and on Sunday mornings, no, on Saturday nights, you had to get your hair pressed for Sunday morning, right? I don't know about you guys, but I had to get my hair pressed for Sunday morning. So that you get your hair pressed with the hot comb. Oh, but you once
And
you got your hair
we
pressed,
share in some of that experience.
Yeah,
you got your hair pressed. There was nothing else you could do, right? You couldn't, you know, you
right.
couldn't.
Yeah.
That hair could not sweat back. It had to be ready for church. And so that so you know, we have memories that when we were going through it, I don't think sometimes we cherish them as much as you know what I'm saying, Natasha, Miss Natasha, you said something powerful when you said you have all those siblings and that was the one time that you had your mom to yourself. So that's a, you know what I'm saying? That is an awesome good thing to kind of pull out for our students and for our families, even for some of our grown people, some of our grown-ups, you know, they're doing that. So I was looking at your page and you have several books that you've written and breathed life into. And so all of them are coming from your experiences, your background, or you know, or are they coming from like something, you know what I'm saying, some another part of your creativity?
Whenever I visit schools, I always talk to kids about where stories come from. And I think most authors will tell you that there's a little piece of them somewhere in the story, so that the stories are not necessarily, you know, just correlated or straight autobiographical stories, but there's something about the topic that really kind of interests you or draws you. So there's that piece of your own curiosity and imagination that's in every story. The books that I have now, um, there's I Love My Hair, which I just talked about, and then there's a companion book called Bippity Bop Barbershop, and that's about a little boy, Kiana's brother, who goes to the barbershop with his dad and gets his hair cut for the first time and that experience. And I wrote about that not only because the barbershop is such an important cultural institution and historical institution in our community, but also because I used to wear my hair really short. And I went to the barbershop to get my hair cut and really enjoyed, you know, kind of being in that space. And so I wanted to really emphasize that. And also that whole thread of families connecting and sharing experiences, meaningful experiences with each other is also part of that. Other books, for example, I have a book that's for a slightly older age group called The Harlem Charade, and that's a mystery, and that takes place in Harlem, New York, where I actually lived. So there's another connection. And I witnessed as I lived there in the late 90s, early 2000s, the gentrification that was happening in that community. So the Harlem that I lived in is completely different from the Harlem that's there now. There's a Whole Foods there. There's all kinds of stuff that people wouldn't even have imagined being in Harlem when I lived there. But it was also about how we represent ourselves and how we take control of our own stories. And I feel like that's a message no matter where you live, for our kids and for our communities in general, to feel like we have some ownership over our stories and deciding which stories we want to tell, which we want to preserve. So in a community like Harlem that has so much history with the Harlem Renaissance and with other Black historical figures and moments who came out of Harlem, you know, once you start building those new shiny apartment complexes or bringing those big box stores into the community, where does that history go? So I wanted us to kind of, kids especially, to kind of think about what's important in their communities and to value their own history and stories and be active in kind of preserving that and creating the communities that they want to see, that they want to live in.
Wow, that's awesome. When you were a child, when you were younger, did you ever think you would be an author? Was there something else that you thought, when you were a little girl, did you want to be an author or a doctor? You know what I'm saying? What kind of led you from what you wanted to be as a child and what you do now?
It's funny because writing has been the one thing that has been consistent in my life. So I started writing when I was 7, and maybe even before that. And like I said, I was inspired by watching my mom. She would write these little stories about me and my sisters and my brother. And that was a really cool thing to kind of see how you could take an experience and put it on a page and make it into a story. And I was a really shy kid. So writing was my way to kind of really explore and express my creativity and communicate. And I got a lot of good feedback, positive feedback for that. And so I continued it. And so that was something that just stayed with me. I've gone to law school. I've thought about being a teacher. I've thought about all kinds of careers, but writing has been the one thing. And then the other option for me was going to be being in a Black punk rock band. So
Okay, okay.
speaking of Mohawk that we were talking about earlier, that was my other career option. And I was going to move to England, and I even cultivated an English accent and, you know,
Hey!
practice signing my name, which is funny. I have a journal. I can look back and I practiced signing my name in my journal because I was figuring I would sign autographs for my band. But then I
But
ended up
you
signing
are
some
signing
others.
autographs now, though,
And
just in a different capacity.
yeah.
Right.
And
That's awesome.
I think that that's really wonderful. And I think you've touched on a couple places. And for our families that will be listening on, you've mentioned your own family a couple of different times. And again, the theme for Black History Month is the Black family. I think one of the things that we really need to look into and uplift more is the role that the family plays really in giving children that space for their creativity, pouring into them that kind of energy. So can you talk to us a little bit about your family? You've mentioned some siblings and your mom and their role in you becoming an author. Something that maybe our families can grab some highlights from. You mentioned being shy, but I know we have some very active children too, and families are looking for ways to direct some of that energy, and a lot of that happens in storytelling and creative spaces. So can you talk to some about that?
Yeah, I think I was really fortunate to grow up in the household that I grew up in. Our family was not perfect by any stretch, but we had a house full of books, which was, I think, a really important thing. Whether or not your child ends up becoming a writer or stories, I think is a really great way to start opening up spaces of imagination, creativity, expressiveness, having even building verbal skills and vocabulary. When you start to hear stories, when you start to tell stories, I mean, that opens up a whole other place in your brain. And I think that translates into other areas in terms of how you perceive situations, how you kind of work through and problem solve, as well as being able to express yourself. So that's one thing. If there's a moment to share stories, whether it's reading a book or to even talk about what happened during your day and to ask questions about it, to think about it like, oh, well, why do you think that happened? Or what do you think you would want to have happened in that situation? So that kind of interaction is, I think, really good. And then just fundamentally, I think we get very concerned about our children and their well-being and what they're going to do for their future. And that's very important. But I think having a space where they're able to explore, and we kind of give them sort of encouragement to do that, whether or not they become a doctor or a lawyer or whatever they're going to become, allow them to have that space to explore their own curiosity and creativity. I ended up going to law school. My mom didn't really push for that, but I ended up going to law school because I did feel like I needed to have something that was a real job, quote unquote. But I think when we perceive things, the way we perceive things is also really important. So you can be a writer and make a living. You can be an artist and make a living. Those skills translate into all kinds of opportunities. So I think we as families need to broaden our perspective too on what success is and what a successful career might be.
Yes, yes, yes. So true. All facts, all facts. And so I do have one more question. Okay. So when you were talking, when we first started, you stated that some of the characters that you and your mom would make up while your mom was doing your hair, some of those characters did not make it into the book. So, would you like to share just one of those characters that did not make it into the book? One of those sessions when you were getting your hair done and you and your mom were talking, and there was one of the characters that did not make it into the book, but you remember even now, when you think back on that session.
Yeah, there was one man, his name was Mr. Simmons. I will never forget him. And he would walk down our block and he had a brace on his leg. And so whenever he walked down our block, you could hear this, this kind of scraping sound. And, before I knew him, we would make up stories and it would, he was always, I mean, this probably is not the best story, but I made up a story about him being kind of like living in the haunted house kind of thing. But then when I actually got to know him, he was the nicest man. And so it turned out to have a twist. Everyone thought he was not, that he was like a really spooky guy, but then, he was the nicest guy in the world. So
But that's fine though, and that's what happens in life, right?
I know kids' imagination about things. We would always hear him coming, like, oh, here comes Mr. Simmons. So, but he was the sweetest man.
Yes, yes. So thank you. Thank you so much for sharing. And thank you for sharing with your gift of writing, you know what I'm saying, with the world, with us all collectively, with all of our families, all of our little girls and little boys. That's when you have a gift and you share that gift with the world, that is to be applauded. You know what I'm saying? So thank you so very much for sharing your gift, a little bit of yourself with the world. Dr. Lester, did you have anything else you would like to ask or add?
Oh, just continued gratitude to you, Ms. Tarpley. Thank you so much. Just for writing. Representation matters so much, and just in terms of what you're putting out in the community, finding positive spaces for your own creativity. I think that's just a great example for our students and our families. And I thank you for using your talents in that way, Kathy, and also for the families that are listening. Through our work with Ms. Tarpley, we will be able to put 100 copies of this text in our students' hands to be a part
Oh,
of their home
that's
libraries. And so
awesome.
we're always attentive, we're wanting to be attentive to grade level, high interest, high quality text for our students and their families at home. Many students grow up in a space where they're surrounded by books and stories. And that's not true for all students. So we're doing our part to increase those home libraries. And then, in addition to that, we'll also be working with Ms. Tarpley in our library services division to add copies of text to our school libraries as well. So some students can check those out and be in rotation as well. So we are just so fortunate that she's using her talents in this way and that it will be able to just kind of pour into our children.
Wow. Thank you. That is awesome. Dr. Luster, I just want to thank you guys. When I say you guys, I mean the FACE department,
A
Shelby
great
County
team.
Schools. Yes. All Dr. Phillips and Dr. Sonia.
Mhm.
And thank you guys, all of you guys, for the work that you guys do for our families, you know what I'm saying, and the community, because you guys are always out there working and
Yes.
bringing different resources into Shelby County Schools for our students. So
Thank
thank you guys so much. You know what I'm saying? We so much appreciate it. Mrs. Natasha, thank you so much. And listeners, you can find Mrs. Natasha's work, her website. I hope I'm saying this right. I want to make sure that I say it right. NatashaTarpley.com. Am I saying that right?
Actually,
Natasha Tarpley
Natasha Tarpley
Writes.com.
writes, as in
That,
WRITES, so
yes.
.com. And I just want to say a quick thank you to both of you as well, Dr. Lester, Ms. Hart. I just want to say, I'm so appreciative of you supporting my work, of you having me, and also of the work that you're doing, because that is where that magic happens with children, being able to have that positive reinforcement and that nurturing in their communities and in their schools. So I really do appreciate that. And I hope you have a wonderful evening, and also, continue this wonderful work.
Thank you. Thank
thank
you.
you.
You're listening to 88.5 FM.